Hey everyone, welcome back. Today we're taking a deep dive into the iPhone 16 Pro Max.
Specifically, we're looking at whether it's a worthy upgrade from the 15 Pro Max.
We've gone through a ton of reviews and comparisons, so we'll break it all down for you.
Yeah, because let's be honest, sometimes those new phone releases feel a bit like, okay, what's actually different here?
Exactly. Like, is it really worth the hype, or is it just a new coat of paint?
And in this case, there are some areas where Apple decided to stick with what works.
And others where they really went all out.
It's kind of fascinating, actually. So you want to start with those if it ain't broke areas?
Sure, let's get those out of the way. Design-wise, you'd be hard-pressed to tell the 16 Pro Max and the 15 Pro Max apart.
Yeah, same titanium frame, same ceramic shield, although Apple claims it's even tougher now, but that's another story.
And the dimensions are practically identical.
Oh, and they swapped out the blue color option for a new desert titanium finish.
Ooh, fancy. But what about the speakers? Those have always been a big deal for iPhone users.
From what we've gathered, they sound pretty much the same as the 15 Pro Max.
So no major audio overhaul this time around.
Nope, it seems like they focused their energy elsewhere.
Which is actually a good thing, because one of the areas where they made significant improvements is battery life.
Now this is where things get interesting.
Because who couldn't use a little more juice in their life, right?
For real.
Yeah.
And we're not just talking about those official Apple figures, we're talking about real-world usage here.
Right, because those can be a little, shall we say, optimistic.
Definitely. One reviewer we saw, and this guy really puts his phone through the ringer, he was getting a solid 2 to 3 hours more battery life compared to the 15 Pro Max.
That's a pretty significant difference.
It is. And get this, he was running beta software, which is notorious for draining the battery faster, so imagine what those numbers will look like with the final software release.
Okay, now that's impressive. But let's move on to the heart of the beast.
You talking about the A18 Pro chip?
You know it.
Because this thing is a powerhouse. I mean, for everyday tasks, you probably won't notice a huge difference from the 15 Pro Max.
But it's when you start doing those more demanding tasks that the 16 Pro Max really pulls ahead.
One reviewer did a 4K video export test, and the 16 Pro Max finished in 1 minute and 27 seconds. The 15 Pro Max took over 2 minutes.
That's not just a speed bump. We're talking about a whole new level of performance here.
Exactly. Editing 4K video on the fly, rendering complex 3D graphics stuff that used to be limited to desktops.
But more power usually means more heat. Did they manage to keep this thing cool?
They did a surprisingly good job with heat management this time around. Reviewers are saying the 16 Pro Max runs noticeably cooler.
Even when they're pushing it to limit.
Even then, and there's this interesting thing about the display brightness too.
Okay, I'm intrigued. Tell me more.
So apparently the 16 Pro Max doesn't seem to dim its screen as aggressively as the 15 Pro Max to combat heat.
So it can actually handle the heat.
It seems that way. It suggests that the phone is doing a much better job of dissipating heat internally.
Clever engineering.
Yeah.
Now let's talk about that new camera control button. The one that's got everyone talking.
Ah, yes, the button that's either loved or hated.
So which side are you on? Love it or hate it?
I'm still on the fence, honestly. It's a cool idea. You can single press it to launch the camera, double press to switch between photo and video.
And you can press and hold to adjust settings, right?
Right, but I've just always used those on-screen controls. It's just what I'm used to.
Muscle memory is a powerful thing.
Tell me about it. But Apple has said they're going to be adding more functionality to the button in future updates, like a half press for autofocus, which would be huge for photographers.
Okay, so potentially a game changer down the line.
Potentially. But speaking of game changers, we've got to talk about the connectivity on this thing.
Oh, yeah. Remember that review we saw where the guy went through a hurricane with his phone?
Yeah, talk about real-world testing. He lost power, lost cell service.
His 15 Pro Max was basically a brick, right?
Pretty much.
Yeah.
But the 16 Pro Max, it managed to hold on to a sliver of signal. And get this, it was pulling faster data speeds than the 15 Pro Max even before the hurricane hit.
That's the power of having the latest and greatest Wi-Fi 7 technology.
It makes a huge difference. But are you ready to dive into the camera upgrades?
Because it seems like that's where Apple really went all out.
They did not hold back. This is where the Pro and Pro Max really shines through.
Everyone's been buzzing about this Fusion camera. What's the deal with this new system?
Well, it all boils down to that new 48MP wide-angle lens.
48MP, that's a serious upgrade.
Right. And it sounds like it could be a game changer, at least from the early reviews.
Okay, so what does that mean for our photos and videos?
Think detail. Like a crazy amount of detail.
So even if I zoom in on a photo, it's still going to look sharp.
Exactly. You can crop in on a landscape, create a whole new composition, and still have incredible clarity.
It's like having a professional camera in your pocket.
That's the goal, right? And it's not just the main camera, by the way.
Oh, right. The ultra-wide lens also got a bump.
Up to 48 MP as well. And speaking of details, macro photography is supposed to be insanely good on the 16 Pro Max.
That's music to my ears, because my macro shots always end up looking like a blurry mess.
Right. But with this phone, you can capture those super intricate details.
Okay, I'm sold. But let's talk video. What kind of frame rates are we talking about?
4K resolution at a buttery smooth 120 frames per second.
Wow, so I can finally shoot those slow-motion action shots I've always wanted to do.
Yeah.
But what about audio? Because amazing video with crappy audio is just a no-go.
They've definitely stepped up their audio game with the 16 Pro Max. It's got 4 microphones.
4? Seriously?
Yeah, and it's not just about louder audio, it's about control. There are different recording modes now.
Okay, like what?
So you've got your standard mode, of course, but then there's in-frame, which focuses the sound right in front of the camera, perfect for vlogging.
Ooh, I like that.
And then there's studio mode for that crisp professional sound.
Wait, studio mode? Like I can record a podcast on this thing.
That's the idea. And if you want to capture the whole scene, they've got cinematic mode, which blends the ambient sounds beautifully.
Apple's really going all in on making this the ultimate content creation phone, aren't they?
Absolutely. They're blurring the lines between professional equipment and your everyday phone. But it does beg the question, is it worth the upgrade?
That is the million-dollar question, isn't it?
It is. And the answer, as always, is it depends.
Right, because if you have the 15 Pro Max, it's not like that's a bad phone.
It's still a fantastic phone, but if you're really craving that extra battery life, the 16 Pro Max is a no-brainer.
And for all the content creators out there, those camera upgrades are seriously tempting.
Oh, yeah. The Fusion camera, the improved macro photography,
Yeah.
and the audio recording options, game changers.
But let's not forget about the price tag. These things are an investment.
That's true. It's all about finding that balance between what you want, what you need, and what your budget allows.
Well said. But it's clear that Apple is focusing on making the iPhone the ultimate mobile device.
Right. It's not just a phone anymore. It's your camera, your editing suite, your recording studio.
Our phones are already our lifelines. Now they're becoming our everything.
It's kind of wild when you think about it, and I'm sure you've seen the rumors about the iPhone 17.
Of course. The rumor mill never sleeps. What are they saying?
Well, there's talk about even more advanced camera tech, maybe even periscope lenses for better zoom.
Ooh, that would be a game changer for sure. And they're always experimenting with new designs and materials. Remember those rumors about a foldable iPhone?
Yeah, who knows what they've got up their sleeves.
It's fun to speculate, but I guess we'll just have to wait and see. It's easy to get caught up in the hype cycle, right? Every year, a new iPhone, and it's like, ooh, shiny. But this one, the 16 Pro Max, it feels different.
It does. It feels like Apple is making a statement.
Like, this is where we're headed. This is the future.
Exactly. And that future is all about, well, it's about you. Okay, maybe not you specifically, but you, the user. You're the creator now.
Because we're all carrying around these incredibly powerful devices in our pockets.
Right. And with every new iPhone, those devices get even more powerful. Think about it. We're shooting amazing photos and videos, recording music, even editing entire films, all on our phones.
It's mind-blowing when you really think about it. Like, I remember when you needed a huge, expensive camera to shoot professional quality stuff.
Oh, totally. And don't even get me started on the audio equipment.
Now it's all right here.
In your pocket. And Apple is clearly embracing that with the Fusion camera, the studio quality audio. They're giving us the tools to create something amazing.
And it makes you wonder about the future, doesn't it? Like, what happens to professional photographers and filmmakers when everyone has a studio in their pocket?
It's a disruption, no doubt, but I think it's also an opportunity.
How so?
Well, the barriers to entry are lower now. You don't need a ton of expensive gear to get started.
You just need a phone and a story to tell.
Exactly. And that's pretty amazing when you think about it.
It is. It's going to be really interesting to see how this all plays out over the next few years.
Oh, absolutely. But that's the beauty of technology, isn't it? It's always changing, always evolving.
Keeps us on our toes. But whether you're rocking the latest and greatest iPhone 16 Pro Max or an older model, I think the message is clear.
Which is?
Don't be afraid to experiment.
Yeah.
Don't be afraid to get creative.
Because you never know what you might create.
Exactly. And on that note, we'll wrap things up. Thanks for joining us for another deep dive.
Until next time.
See you.